So with a new URL,
New URL for the pad or which thing?
no, for this meeting here.
Oh, yes. New meeting ID. Seems our calendars were all updated.
Looks like. So there's actually not that much from my side.
Okay. A couple of things I just wanted to start off real quick, if we could. So last week during this meeting, the pad was corrupted. I wonder if it's because multiple people were trying to type in it at the same time. I don't have any other clues, but it was recovered thanks to. Anyway, it was recovered, and I'm terrible remembering who did it. So we got all the content back, lost some formatting, but we're good to go again. Were there any notes from last week we still needed to add, Sebastian, or did we get those?
No, I've recovered everything.
Great. And do you have a link in there to a new pad, the dashboard?
Again, please, to the dashboard. What do you mean?
In the pad for the notes for today, there's a comment about refresh from the dashboard.
Yeah, that's two separate entries. There is a dashboard face-to-face meeting in March to June. There is a doodle. If you want to join, in either in Brno in Czech Republic or in Nuremberg, to be determined, then feel free to engage in a doodle.
Yeah, it looks like I can see it.
Yeah, there's a link to the doodle in the dashboard face-to-face meeting, in the Etherpad.
Got it.
Feel free to join.
Good group there. This was to vote for when to meet and where to meet.
Yeah, it's about when to meet. Where to meet seems to be still unclear.
Last time we met in Nuremberg and I volunteered, we can go to Brno this time as well if we want to change a venue. So I just got to know the date so we can set up the facilities, etc. So.
Mm-hmm.
And this time around too, we also decided that it should be a lot more orchestration as part of this as well. It was a lightly covered topic last time, and that's why we're opening up the doodle here and making sure that we get a good orchestration presence there as well.
Yes, I agree. And we should take this opportunity and meet, if possible.
Sounds good. Okay, so everybody vote.
Everybody voted. Minus refresh. We in Berlin last year we've discussed refreshing the inventory when calling device ls, and it was not yet implemented in the interface, but it does make sense to have that, especially for the SSH orchestrator. Travis, do you have an idea if it is possible to trigger a refresh of the device inventory in Rook? And if it is feasible to actually call that?
Right now, I mean, in Rook, we refresh the device inventory just periodically. Well, originally it was every 30 seconds, and we turned it way down to like once every 30 minutes because it just wasn't necessary. And we wanted to find a better way to trigger that. Might even be an hour. I can't remember. Maybe it's 30 minutes, but it's yeah. And I think Sebastian Hahn, you started looking at that discovery based on Ceph inventory, or I mean Ceph volume, right? Instead of doing Rook's own thing. Seb, are you there?
Mm.
Yeah, let's say that again. So dash refresh.
It's actually a pull
Question
request.
around. Oh, it's a pull request. Okay.
Have a link to the pull request that adds it to the interface.
Got it. That was pull request.
Yeah. Oh, that's it from my side.
Oh, I see. And this PR is saying that if we don't use that new option, dash refresh, it will just return cached results. So I see the issue. We would want to get the latest. Yep.
Yeah.
Noah, did you have any comments around your PR?
Not really. I implemented it for the SSH orchestrator, and I added pretty simple semantics. I just have a timeout for the cache, or I respect the refresh flag. The semantics for the SSH orchestrator seem pretty simple. I just don't know about the other orchestrators.
Yeah, I don't think that DeepC or Ansible right now do cache that information. So it's basically slow every time as far as I know.
Sure. Yeah, I think DeepC uses the device information. It's in the call something which is actually it's cached, but it refreshes periodically also.
Oh, okay.
Top mind, that's the term. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, in the case of Ansible, is getting information each time, so it will be needed to add the cache to the Ansible orchestrator.
Mm-hmm. And we have a new.
It makes total sense, the option, in my opinion.
Yeah, it just needs to be implemented in the same way, and that's not that easy, because yeah, you have to basically inform the external orchestrator to do the right thing.
Do you think that that PR with the refresh flag is going to be generic enough? I mean, even if we don't implement caching on Rook or DeepC, does having the flag there now but being a no-op for those backends make sense?
I think so, yes. We can provide a warning to the user that that flag is not really implemented, but it does not break stuff in general.
Right.
And when you say make it a no-op, we're saying that we would refresh every time it's requested, or that it would have its own cache, as long as when, for example, Rook refreshes, we expect to get the latest inventory.
Yeah. So we should not implement an additional caching layer in the orchestrator. That's one thing.
And that option it works like a hint because it's impossible to know that we are actually seeing the latest, the most up-to-date information. So it always works, right?
Yeah, it should be fine.
Yep. Okay.
One question about this. What is the I think that maybe probable is good to have this cache layer at the orchestrator level. Okay, most of the operations that we are returning things, what we are returning is just a completion object. So maybe to implement a cache for the completions is it could be useful for everybody. But I don't know what is your opinion about that.
I'm not sure I have an opinion yet. Sebastian, anything?
So you mean about implementing some kind of caching for every orchestrator?
Yes, I think that well, probably not all the operations will need a cache, okay? But I think that in most well, in certain cases, we should implement the cache simply storing the completion objects, okay? I don't know. I think that in memory cache will be enough. I don't know, but could be a good solution, I think, in the short term. And if we need, if we see that a more sophisticated cache is needed, well, we can go forward with this solution. Okay, so but I think that in this case, the cache could be a service that is useful for every orchestrator, not for every operations, but probably in each of the orchestrators, we can use this service in different operations. So I think that to put in the orchestrator a cache that everybody can use with completion objects is a good idea, my opinion.
Yeah, I think in general, if it makes sense to have common operations, then implementing that only once does make sense. So yeah, I think so too.
I'm trying to remember why John was originally suggesting not to do that, and I'm guessing it's because Rook already has some level of caching.
Yeah,
And
the caching is a bad example. Caching is a bad example because Rook already caches, DeepC already caches, and it does not make sense to cache the inventory in SSH and in Rook, in the Rook orchestrator and DeepC orchestrator. Yeah, that's true. But in general, if it makes sense to have some common functionality, yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. But I understand that the only orchestrators that will need this cache for the get inventory operations will be the SSH orchestrator and the Ansible orchestrator.
Yeah.
Okay.
And why not? Having common code does make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
The next topic, inventory filter labels.
Oh, that's me. I just tossed that on there. I just wanted to highlight that the inventory filter abstraction in the orchestrator has labels, but as of last week, we seem to be like removing labels from the generic orchestrator interface. So I'm just wondering if those have a different purpose, if we missed something. Sebastian, do you know about that?
So the
Right.
idea was that, yeah, go on.
Sorry, Sebastian. No, please go ahead.
So the idea was that setting labels is something that we would rather avoid right now. Just to be able to consume labels would be an idea. And I think especially for Rook, it does make sense to filter by label, because labels are a major filter capability in the Rook world, in the Kubernetes world. So I think it does make sense to have these in the inventory filter, especially for Rook. I don't know about the other orchestrators, but for Rook, I do think they do make sense.
So you're saying these will be passed in through device LS interface?
Yeah.
And then it's up to the backends to do their own labeling. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the backend already does filter by label. If you look into the Rook orchestrator and then see how that Rook orchestrator filters pods, it does everything by label.
Well, and to clarify where these, so this will be a filter just during inventory, so to know or restrict where we run this inventory pod, for example, right? Or is there some other way that the label is used?
Right now, I think it's only used for filtering.
Yeah, I think we've nixed most of the label stuff from the high level interface.
Yeah. And I think it makes sense to keep labels in a low profile here in the orchestrator.
Yep.
But keep labels in the get inventory method.
Yeah, it's a bit of a contradiction. Yeah, sure. And
so you are referring
do you have a better idea?
No, it's okay. It's okay. But I think that in what, for example, in the when we are creating a new host or we are adding a new OSD, what we decide is to add automatically a standard label to mark that in this host we have this service, the OCD service, okay? And the same for other service. It's what we decide in the last meeting. Is that true? It's what we are going to do. So it seems that the add host and remove host should be removed from the orchestrator interface. If hosts are going to be only added when we are doing operations over the cluster, for example, adding a new host and adding a new RGW service, any kind of service, this means that we are not need that is not needed to have a specific operation for adding host and removing host.
That's related to a discussion that we had last week. The problem with removing the add host functionality and remove host functionality is that we then no longer can add hosts to get the inventory of. So we need to have a device LS even for nodes that don't have any OSDs running on them. And so I would be in favor for keeping add and remove host for this use case.
But why do we need to know which hosts are being managed by an orchestrator backend to get the devices of whole hosts? The orchestrator interface doesn't need to know what are the hosts or how many. It just queries. What?
The SSH one does, right? It needs to know which nodes to go probe.
But the SSH one, it's the backend implementation. So the SSH implementation knows which host is managing and queries the hosts for the devices and delivers it to the orchestrator interface. The same way as the DeepC knows which minions it has, the Ceph Ansible knows how many machines it has, and the Rook knows what are the resources available to the cluster. And the orchestrator interface just asks, what are the devices I have?
Rook just asks Kubernetes, for example, what are my nodes? Yep. It doesn't need to be told otherwise.
Right. Yeah. That's why I don't see a reason to have to manage hosts unless we want in the future, and I think this just applies maybe more to bare metal environments, where we want to use the orchestrator to also add machines to our cluster, in the sense of the orchestrator will tell Salt to add a minion, it will tell Ceph Ansible to add a machine, and to the SSH orchestrator to add a new host. But
I agree with you, Ricardo. I think that at the orchestrator level, in the orchestrator AP, probably we won't need these two functions. But in any case, this makes more difficult the implementation in all the methods in the orchestrator. Because, for example, in order to remove one OSD, you should check in the host that there is nothing about another OSD. Do you understand? Each time that we are going to do an operation over a host, removing one service, we should be sure that there is no other service of the same type in the host. Probably this is only valid for OSD services, but well.
But when removing one OSD, we pass the OSD ID, which is unique, right?
Yeah.
And the orchestrator implementation should remove that one.
Yes, but well, in complex installations, maybe you can have several different parts of the same OSD in different hosts.
So you're actually doing host management within the Ansible orchestrator. You're adding hosts for so you want to add hosts if there is no OSD on that specific host, and you want to add or want to remove hosts if you're removing the last OSD, and that's very much similar to the SSH orchestrator that also needs to do host management. And if we have at least two orchestrators that do host management, then that would be a case for keeping it in the API.
Well, and one more scenario too, from Rook perspective, is so if you might have nodes that exist in Kubernetes, but you might not want to have OSDs added or removed from them automatically. Maybe add and remove host if it's specific to OSD behavior. You tell it when to add and remove host or add and remove OSDs.
Or maybe you have a label associated with your Rook cluster, and then the Ceph cluster is confined to whatever that label is. Yeah, so
right. So you could add or remove the label. I guess it could be like adding and removing the host.
So we have a way to implement that functionality in at least three orchestrators, even in very different ways.
I'd be inclined to keep it.
Yeah.
It's already there, right? Yeah. I mean, there's sort of the other piece that I don't know if we have a pattern yet for adding commands that are specific to the implementation. Yeah.
So we have orchestrators that need some settings, like the deep sea orchestrator. So it's already there.
Okay.
But they're very much
settings,
different.
But
yeah, they're module settings.
We don't really have a concept of here's an arbitrary action that only this orchestrator needs to do.
Yeah. It's the deep sea orchestrator has a setting salt_API_URL that you can set. But that's very specific to the deep sea orchestrator, of course.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll keep the add and remove host. Sounds like is the conclusion.
Yeah, I would say so.
That's it for that topic. Next. Go ahead, Sebastian.
Yeah. Go ahead. The next topic is Rook.
Yep. Just had a few bullet points in here for Rook. Sebastian, you found last week that the orchestrator module is failing to create OSDs, correct?
Yeah, Jeff Layton made a pull request. I'm really happy.
It should be fixed now. I found the same problem, so.
Okay, so known issue, got a PR. Great, we're good there. And then in other, not necessarily related to the orchestrator, but Rook is failing to, I was testing on Friday, Rook is not able to orchestrate Nautilus right now. It's not connecting to the Mons, so I'm not sure or wondering if it's related to Messenger 2 changes. Sebastian Hahn, did you find anything the last couple of days with your Messenger 2 work, if you can get that working again?
So I guess after Ben's PR, I might have I guess I did something wrong during the rebase, or I didn't see where things changed. So the PR is not working anymore. I haven't had much time to look into it, but if is it something we see in the Rook CI at the moment? Like every single jobs are failing to deploy Nautilus, or
so in the CI today, there's no test yet that targets Nautilus, so it's not blocking the CI. But there is a PR I just opened a couple days ago, which will run tests on Nautilus, and those are failing.
Okay.
But the PR hasn't merged yet, and so then I was testing just without the integration tests, just trying manual tests to try out a Nautilus, and without your Messenger 2 changes in Rook, a couple weeks ago at least, it was working again after I fixed the port to be 6789.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like that isn't working anymore with the latest Nautilus builds. So I'm not sure if something else changed or if it was more Messenger 2 changes that might have made it so that Rook isn't working.
I've seen the failure somewhere else, where with the latest image, we can't really bootstrap for some reasons. So this might be related. But I don't think we have been having any issues in the Ceph Ansible CI, so it's a little bit weird. But I'll look into that.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's specific to Rook. And if your Messenger 2 PR fixes it, great. Just wanted to clarify that even just the default port isn't working today with Nautilus in Rook. And yeah, I think that covered all the points for Rook for now. So at least related to orchestration. There's other things going on with DSI we don't need to discuss here probably. But otherwise, any topics to bring up for the group today? Going once, going twice.
Yeah, maybe
we'll
one
call it good
thing.
For today.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. It's last week during my work on building the CSV files for the OpenShift installer, I came across an Ansible orchestrator. So you know that now everything that is deployed through the new OpenShift installer. So there is a monolithic install where you have all the basic components, but anything that you want to add after this has to be as part an orchestrator that will deploy one thing. And it seems that Ansible has something for this too, which actually relies on the Ansible runner service. But this is actually that this operator runs as a pod in a Kubernetes environment. So if this is really what I think it is, then maybe we should start looking at this a little bit more in detail. So that deploying Ceph with Ansible can also be done through the Ansible orchestrator in Kubernetes instead of having our standalone instantiation of the Ansible runner service. So perhaps Juan Miguel, if you have time, you could start looking into just have a look at what I'm pasting in the chat so you can get familiar with it a little bit and see if this is something that we could work on or something like this, just to get closer from what the Ansible guys are doing on the OpenShift side.
Okay, sure.
Thanks.
I will take a look and send an email, for example, or get to the IRC.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Welcome.
And that's it for me. I guess this could be. My point is that if this is really what I think it is, then this might help on reducing the work we have to do to mimic what Rook does with Kubernetes. Because if this Ansible orchestrator is part of Kubernetes already, then there are certain things that will get inside Kubernetes, like inventories and stuff like that. So that will be much easier as part of the implementation. And I guess we could also have, when it comes to implementing new functionalities, it will be easier if we all rely on the same component. So that's an interesting piece, I think. And that's it.
Okay.
Cool.
Anybody else think of a topic to bring up today? Okay. Well, have a good day, everyone.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.